Good evening, all. I hope you have been well and safe during this pandemic. Thank you for joining us on another episode of WWF Explains, also the eighth episode of the series. And I'm Hakel, and I'll be moderating the evening's panel discussion. Now, I've noticed that there are regular listeners who have been joining us since the beginning of the series. So thank you for your support, and thank you for the feedback to help us improve our sessions. Now, in the last episode, we spoke about shark trade in Singapore and sustainable seafood. In this episode, we're going to talk about illegal wildlife trade, but with a focus on online trade. I'm really excited for this one because I myself, personally witnessed these trades happening on social media and e-commerce platforms. Maybe you have witnessed them too, but I'm happy to say that this evening we couldn't have a better group of panelists to explore the topic with us. Before I introduce them, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please make sure that you post your questions on the Zoom Q&A, and my team will be monitoring the questions as we go along. But since we're going to have the Q&A at the end of the panel discussion, I will also still be taking in questions in between. So please put them in the Q&A function. Let me now introduce our panelists. So maybe our panelists, you can switch on your videos so we can see you. All right. So we have Dr. Adrian Liu, Group Director at NParks. Dr. Adrian is NParks' resident expert on wildlife conservation and wildlife trade. He will speak about illegal wildlife regulations in Singapore and how Singapore is, stepping up as a key player in stopping illegal wildlife trade, both online and offline. Now, we also have Serene Cheng, a wildlife trade specialist at Traffic International Southeast Asia. And one of her works is in tackling the illegal bird trade. Now, she will offer insights into the current state of the trade regionally and some of the regional conservation projects, that is already being implemented to deter the online trade. But there is another person to add another important perspective to the conversation, and that is Sami Gizelbash from Google. So Sami oversees Google's Global Accelerator Program, among many things. He is also Google's tech expert. So he will share more about Google's role in combating the online trade, also help us touch on the role of technology and digital innovation in deterring illegal wildlife trade activities online. So to my esteemed panelists, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I got to say, this is a big topic to unpack, and we can surely go on and on for more than an hour, and that still barely, scratches the surface of the issue. But nonetheless, we need to have this discussion because people want to know, and we'll try our best to share the key points and the highlights as much as we can. So since this is a pretty heavy topic, right, maybe we should start with something more lighthearted, a lighthearted question. Perhaps maybe a question to Sami first, or Adrian, right? What is your personal connection to wildlife? Or maybe share with us a memorable story you had with wildlife. Maybe you can start with Adrian first.
Hey, thanks, Heike. Hi, Serene and Sami. And thanks for inviting us here. A big welcome to everyone who's logged in. I've always been interested in nature and started with my family. We used to go to the beach, play around, and then I'll be wandering, looking at the wildlife there, birds that fly, the hermit crabs that run around. Then I went to into NUS, and then I started to get involved in surveys, and I think there was a few profound moments, like once, and during a survey, it was an evening survey in the nature reserves with NParks, and I was not in NParks yet, and I saw this oriental dwarf kingfisher. It was very beautiful. It was sleeping, and I know it's migratory, and so it was quite profound. And then there were other instances also, like some of the seizures that we are going to highlight later, that actually really influence how I think how I thought and how some of my colleagues also thought about illegal wildlife trade. Yeah.
That's an interesting story, Adrian. Yeah, I can't wait for you to talk more about the seizures. I think there's a lot of things that we can highlight on that note. Maybe Sami, to answer that question.
Thank you, Heiko. And hello to you and everybody, and to my fellow panelists, Adrian and Serena. It's a pleasure to be here. For myself personally, it started at a young age. Similarly, I grew up in a small wooded area in the U.S., a small town, and I just ended up spending a lot of my time outside. I was a bit of a wild kid, and my parents liked it that way when I was outside and making most of the mess outside. And if I had to recall one particular moment, I mean, I was catching snakes and frogs and turtles and all of those things on a regular basis. But there was one moment where I came across a spider that I was really fascinated with. And, I hadn't seen that spider before. And I remember, raising it to my dad and saying, hey, I've never seen this one. And he called the science professor at our local school, who actually drove down to see it. And he understood what it was, and he understood that it was kind of a rare species to find there. And I got so excited by that experience. I was like, wow, like there's stuff to find, and this I must have been around 6 or 7 years old at that time. And so really ever since then, I have moved around a lot. I've been in Singapore for 11 years now. Just before I came to Singapore, I spent a few months in South Africa, and I spent some time on safari. And I took a camera, and that changed my life when it came to photography and wildlife. And so I found a whole new way to connect with wildlife through photography, which I continue to this day. I love volunteering with national parks. A lot of the great programs that Adrian and his team have set up. And I work on a few programs related to wildlife now at Google as well, in collaboration with WWF and traffic and so on.
Cool. And speaking about wildlife photography, I'm slowly learning into macro photography right now. Again, at like literally closer to wildlife itself, and it has been a really fantastic experience, learning the traits. But I guess I can relate to you in some ways, Sami. Maybe the question now is to Serene. Perhaps you have a memorable story with wildlife.
Actually, I do have a spider story, Sammy. When I was a kid, I remember when my dad used to bring me to MacRitchie Reservoir and we used to watch the spider webs and the dew in the morning. But yeah, hi everyone. Good evening, whatever time it is where you are. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to bring the mood down by talking about my first wildlife trade experience, which is a little bit depressing, so I'm very sorry. So I started working on wildlife trade in end of 2013, 2014. And my first experience carrying out a market survey. Basically, market surveys are where we go to where people sell wildlife and try to document what's being sold, like what species, what kind of commodities, how many, that sort of information. So in 2014, I went to Jakarta, to the biggest bird market there. And just stepping into the market, it was like a sensory overload. It's very overwhelming. You can just hear thousands of birds squawking, and you can smell like bird droppings, rotting food, choked drains, cigarette smoke. And everything's really stuffy and really dark. So I think if you're claustrophobic, you would not have fun there. And I think what really struck me was how like the birds were stacked up in there, like literally stacked. You have cages on the floor, cages on the ceiling, cages stacked on each other. And in some of the cages, there's just so many birds that even the birds are stacked on each other. So I think that was quite a shocking experience for me. And I'm a bird watcher in my spare time. Not very good one, but amateur bird watcher. So I like watching birds in the wild. So to see them in cages made me pretty sad and pretty mad. And I guess that motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, quite contrary to the stories that were shared by Sami and Adrian. I think, Serene, you're just interested and excited to go into the topic already, right? That's why you brought. And
it's my job, so
yeah. I guess it's a good segue to talk about the topic that the reason why we are here for the conversation. Anyways, let's just go right to it, right? The question that I'm begging to know is, with all the advancement in technology, with all the social media we have today in different platforms, we're just like bombarded with different innovation with technology. right? So perhaps the question for all the panelists here would be, do you think, has the advancement of digital technology made it easier to conserve wildlife and end wildlife trafficking, or perhaps the other way around? Maybe we can have Serene to share first.
Okay, sure. I would say the advancement of digital technology has its pros and cons. So even though on the bad side, technology does give all these illegal traders more platforms and avenues to sell wildlife, like they can reach out to a wider audience. On the flip side, improved technology can also be used to tackle illegal wildlife trade. So not only specifically talking about online trade, but even how to detect wildlife or analyzing the data that we're collecting about wildlife and visualizing it, mapping it. And I think people are even talking about using blockchain technology in traceability, things like microchips, QR codes. So yeah, I think there are pros and cons to it.
Maybe Adrian, you want to jump in on this? Like, what do you think about it?
Yeah, definitely. It's good and at times bad in certain ways. For us, technology has been a good platform for us to leverage on communicating with our scientists, especially
Adrian, we are slowly losing you, so stay with us.
I realized that sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so it's really helped us communicate technology very quickly with our counterparts, other scientists for our forensic science, sharing a lot of bioinformatics, and also working with customs and really collaborating very quickly on intel that we can act on. So that has been a really good thing. Of course, on the flip side, right, I think products are easier, in terms of advertisements and buying. So we do keep an eye on that.
Right.
I guess I think having Google here, Sammy here is really great because I think some of the algorithms to look for these things also becomes improved and better in our fight against this illegal wildlife. So I'm glad that we are working and collaborating together on this. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps I think we want to hear from Google as well, being a tech company itself. So
Sure.
Yeah.
I might be biased here. I'm very pro technology, and I've always been, growing up. And I remember when the internet opened up, and you'd have to, use your dial-up connection, and it would take forever, and everything was slow. But it was just incredible to be able to connect with people all around the world, and there were people just like you. It was so different from watching the TV, where everybody on the TV was a celebrity, and then all of a sudden you're on a screen again, but you're actually just speaking to other peers who have similar interests to you. And I think the important thing to remember about the internet here is it's just a tool, right? It's just a tool. I liken it to a car, right? A car can be used for good, right? You can use a car to rescue stray animals in the streets of Singapore, or you can use a car to deliver an exotic pet to a potential customer. And so the internet's no different. So I very much, I think Adrian and Serene's responses resonate with me as well. Like, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. We are becoming increasingly aware of the way that it's being used in bad ways when it comes to illicit wildlife trading. And so then we're it's important for all of us. It's all of our responsibilities. And I mean that to the viewers as well. Here, our participants, it's really up to all of us to continue being part of that community and making sure we improve our response when we see this type of stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned about tool, and I really like how you use the word tool, right? That a tool can be used for something good, can be used for something bad. So that begs the next question: is IWT, illegal wildlife trade, more rampant today because of the potential of this tool, and that is the internet? Has it because now when you go online, you can reach wider market? So could it be the reason why it's more rampant today? Maybe Serene, you want to speak first?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think access is definitely one of the factors. The fact that, like Sammy said, everybody can access all these platforms, these internets, they can go on, they can buy, they can sell. So it's more widespread, I would say. But coming from the science point of view, I mean, I think that it's possible that illegal wildlife trade seems more rampant today because we're talking about it more. There's a lot more awareness about it. There's a lot more being done to tackle it. So because it's in the limelight a little bit more, so it may seem to be more rampant. So we can't necessarily measure whether it's more now compared to before. And I think there's another interesting factor about why there might seem to be more wildlife trade as well. And that's looking at the demand and spending power. So as more people are able to spend money to buy like luxury products or exotic pets, then it seems like there's more wildlife trade occurring.
Well, yeah, I guess I do have to agree on your point, right? When you put more light into a certain issue, then we start to see more of it. And then we have this, could be a misconception that there's actually been an increase of it, right? When in actual fact, it has always been like that. It's just we're shedding more light to that. Perhaps Adrian, you want to jump in as well and to share?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think what Serene says is right. But on the other hand, I mean, it allows us to collect a lot of information, and it also affords us opportunities to do enforcement and also education. So we are seeing that as a very big potential. Like for example, this webinar and some of the highlights that we did. When we did Ivory Crush, we had a 24-hour live streaming just as a matter of outreach to people to show people that we are stopping these illegal items from going on back into the trade. So like Sammy rightly said, it's a very powerful tool and it can be used both ways. So we need to, I think collectively, right, we need to be able to respond, to the illegal wildlife trade in equal or more powerful way than what the illegal wildlife traders are doing. So it's very timely that there's a coalition going on and that we are cooperating more at the levels of the NGO, the public, like the people who are tuning now with WWF and traffic. Yeah, and then also, partnering with really powerful forces like Google, to stem this trade. So it's very hopeful. And I think that's where we can harness the energy of the internet as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you brought some really good points there. And I get a follow-up question then for Sami to answer. Since you're talking about the online market, then perhaps you can comment on that. How is it like, the online market? Maybe Google have done a study on it, something.
Yeah, I can give you our own experience right now from a Google perspective. Actually, so Adrian referred to a coalition, and I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more if we want to get into it further. But yeah, it started around 2012. We had Google Shopping. We had launched that in the US. It was a platform marketplace, and we started to see an increase in listings selling ivory. And this was really concerning to our Google Shopping team and our policy team. And so that's when we actually reached out to WWF in the US at first and said, hey, look, this is what's happening on our platform. And obviously we don't want to be a place where this is being sold and traded. So what can we do? So there was a lot of learning for us during that stage. And so we can go into the different ways that illegal wildlife trading, happens, how it's conducted. But it was really a big eye opener for us to see the tactics that are used, and then trying to enforce the measures required to be able to not only detect them, to Adrian's point, having algorithms and these types of filters that help a platform like Google Shopping to be able to catch these things, because it's never our intention to have these types of things on our platform. But to be able to detect them and then to be able to take action on them, verify that they are indeed illegal listings, and they're, and then actually being able to report them appropriately. And I have to say the work with WWF has been incredible. That process led us to discovering that, hey, this is a problem for all major tech companies, all platforms, social media, e-commerce platforms around the world, and that we would all benefit if we could learn from organizations like WWF, like Traffic, like IFAW around the world, and kind of get their experience and expertise, and then use our technology understanding to combine these strengths and have a good approach to dealing with this. To Adrian's point.
Yeah, I just hold that up for a while. I think you mentioned talking about the potential of using technology to combat some of these things, and I do have a question on that, but at the later part of the panel discussion. But I'm interested in that. But I think for now, we have a question to the audience. Since we're already talking about the online market, I think all of us here have been online at some point of our life. In fact, now that we all cooped up at home, perhaps you spend more time online. What are some of this is again for a question to the audience, put it in the chat. What are some of the wildlife that you have seen being traded or sold online? Doesn't matter where is it social media or e-commerce platform? Put it in the chat. Where are the places, or what types of animals have you seen being traded online? Okay, and we get to your responses in a bit. So while waiting for the audience to put in their answers, the next question I have for you is for Sami. That is to talk more about where or how our animals are being sold online. Perhaps you can start with where exactly are they sold online.
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to illicit trades, right? It's the third or fourth largest industry out there, and obviously drugs and other things being slightly higher in terms of visibility. Those types of markets, for example, with drugs, have been pushed further and further down, deeper into secret pockets of the web that I'd say probably the average consumer isn't really familiar with. However, when it comes to illegal wildlife trade, and I'm seeing the comments that people are leaving here, it's right out in the open, right? It's in full view. It's happening on major social media platforms, on e-commerce platforms. As I mentioned, it was happening on Google Shopping. And so most of the platforms that we're probably accustomed to face this challenge, right? That as long as they're attracting lots of customers, and in some cases we're talking about billions of users on these platforms, then illegal wildlife trade, traders will want to be on that platform to get those eyeballs, to attract the right customers towards them. And so I'd say that's really where most of it is happening online right now. And the fact that with COVID, and I think COVID has actually been helpful in some ways for this, because I think the in-person trade, the marketplaces, all of these things have become much more regulated and restricted. The trade, we're seeing many larger busts, right, happening, through customs and so on. So I think there's more scrutiny on items being shipped physically from place to place. But that also just then shifts the strategy for a lot of these traders to these very popular, visible online platforms.
Oh yeah, I do. At least for me, I do see them, sold on social media platforms. Like it was really bizarre to me. Like, how could they have, sell in the open, like you mentioned, right? So it's just a question that keeps bugging me. Like, how is it possible that they can still do it online? Which we later on, I think there is a question on that, on how exactly are we combating these things? What are some of the deterrent strategies? And we'll get to that in a bit. Perhaps maybe another question I have is, in your research or in your work to combat the illegal wildlife trade online, what is something that has really stood out for you or shocked you in your whole experience? Maybe Adrian can share this one.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, some of the seizures that we made were actually quite shocking. Like in 2019, right, we seized about 27.5 tons of scales and 8.8 tons of elephant ivory. And this was really work that we did with the China Customs. Eventually, we got a UN award for it because of the close collaboration we had, and because of that significant seizure to deter the trade. And it was shocking because you think it's just part and parcel of your work, but then when you start to pull out these pangolin scales and ivory, I mean, the staff on the ground, they were feeling it. And it's like, I think at at the even I think a third of the way they were asking, my goodness, how many animals died for these? And you can't really offer an answer. So what we did was after that seizure, we tried to, I mean, it was good that we seized it. It deters the trade. But what can we do after that? So we collaborated with, we are collaborating with this Professor Sam Wazer from Washington State University to actually type this, look at the genetics using DNA sampling. So we have a Center for Wildlife Forensics that is working very closely with Sam Wazer to look at the genetics, to look at where all these seizures come from and how related they are. Because in a way, we can then convict, syndicates for a bigger crime. Also know where the trade flows are coming from. So that's important work. So the death of those animals doesn't is not in vain. We can there's a lot of information besides just DNA. There's a lot of markings. How they are basically packed and all that offers a lot of information as well. So we are hard at work in doing that. And the Center for Wildlife Forensics was particularly set up to go deeper, to really not just do that deterrence, but also use that as evidence and to use that as a to really delve deeper, because DNA is really a traceable thing, it's one of those, so these are traceable commodities, through its DNA. So that's very groundbreaking work, and we are very glad to have some of these scientists on our panel also, advisory panel and our Center for Wildlife Forensics. So we look forward to more of that kind of work that will continue. So yeah, that was shocking.
Yeah.
But it definitely strengthens our resolve. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does sound very shocking, and it's good to know when you pointed out the Wildlife Forensic Center and the things that they do. I think it sounds really terrific. We wouldn't really want to this wildlife to die in vain. So, what can we learn from all of these things? And at the end of the day, it all contributes to the solution, right, of illegal wildlife trade online. How do we solve it? I'm just gonna bring up some of the responses that is really given by our audiences here. The question was, what were some of the wildlife that they have seen traded online? And well, there's plenty of responses. I shouldn't be smiling because it's not a good news. But I'm seeing here there's birds, spiders, snake, turtles, bearded dragons. I think that's more common, right? Bearded dragons, langur, slow lories, songbirds. What else? Hedgehogs, right? Foxes even. That surprised me. Foxes and fake parts and derivatives, pangolin, tiger parts, and so on and so forth. Right now, I do have some species, right? Animal species that I do want Serene to just comment on. I'm just going to bring up the slide here for now. So Serene, I'm just going to show you the photo of it, and you tell me what it is and what are they commonly traded for, since we are in a conversation of animals that are being traded.
Okay, so here we've got white ramshama, which is a species of songbird, and it's used quite popular. Well, it's quite popular with people who like to keep songbirds for their singing abilities, but also for use in bird singing competitions, which some of you may have seen in Singapore, where you've got these uncles sitting around with the bird cages hanging out. So I heard, Heiko, you mentioned that some people mentioned birds were being sold online. So yes, we do find quite a lot of birds sold online. I just want to talk about songbird trade. It's not just being kept as pets or for their singing ability. Sometimes people keep songbirds for luck or for superstition as well. So there are certain species that are seen to bring good luck, or merit release of birds is believed by some to bring good karma. But there's also other countries in the world where people eat songbirds as a delicacy or as like just wild meat. Yeah, so you do find different uses for songbirds.
Well, that one surprises me. I didn't know they are used as a delicacy too. So yeah. The next one is quite interesting. I would like to know your comment on that. This one.
Okay, so this here is rosewood furniture. This particular species of rosewood is found from Indochina. And I think it's a very good one to talk about because not many people think of plants when we talk about wildlife trade, but wild flora are considered to be wildlife as well. And rosewood is, it's a kind of hardwood where it's got this very deep, rich, reddish sheen to it. So it's quite popular for use in furniture, but also as carvings, so decorative carvings, but people also wear them as bracelets. And some musical instruments do use rosewood as well. So rosewood is actually threatened from overharvesting across the world. So there's about 300 or so species of rosewood, and international trade in all of them is now regulated because they are now so endangered.
Hmm. Well, yeah, this is interesting because, like you said, not a lot of people know that wild plants can also be illegally traded. And later on, if we have the time, we can speak more about that. But I do have one other photo that I would like to show. This one, yeah.
Okay, some of you may have seen this before. This is Indian star tortoise, and it's now protected from all commercial international trade because it's been traded and harvested in such large volumes that the species is thought to be very heavily threatened. So tortoises and freshwater turtles are quite popularly kept as pets, but also some species are used for meat and medicine. People cook the meat, or they boil and grind the shells down to make medicine. People also use the shells as collectibles sometimes. All tortoises are also internationally protected, or the trade is
Hmm.
regulated. So you need permits to trade in them, and some freshwater turtles as well.
Yeah, they did some. I think a couple of our audience members did mention that they've seen turtles, right, or tortoises that are being. Yeah, maybe perhaps
Yeah.
this could be one of the more regular ones that are being traded,
So
right?
we do see them
Yeah,
online a lot, definitely. Yeah.
yeah. I would like to focus the attention on animals that are traded in Singapore, more commonly confiscated or found in Singapore, right? This next slide, perhaps Adrian could speak more on this, right? Some of the wild animals, whether or not they can be kept as pets or not. How do we know?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a list of approved pets. So some of them are not approved for very good reasons. Like for example, I think one of the experiences we had in the past was that hedgehogs would be released, and they're just not suited to the environment here. So they do suffer. So there's a good reason why we don't allow such things. Or like let's say you release a lizard, it becomes invasive, and then it actually competes with the native wildlife as well. So there are adverse effects on the ecosystem. Not to mention, look at the pandemic now. It's really related to probably illegal wildlife trade and the bush meat kind of situation, very unhygienic, and then you get zoonotics, passing from wild animals, to humans. So yeah, wild animals shouldn't be kept as pets. I mean, I think people, and I think the new generation, if we educate them, I think they would understand the very basic premise that the wild animals should be left in the wild. Yeah.
And on that note, right, since these are all, some of the examples of wildlife that are being confiscated or being traded in Singapore, do you think these owners, right, most of them, do you think they are aware that these are illegal? Because I know a lot of them are like monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. They see their friends have it, so they want to have it as well. But how do you, in part of your operation, what do you learn? These owners, do they know that it's illegal or not?
Yeah, so
Most
I
times.
think there are social media platforms, and then it seems like a very popular thing to do. So some of them are unaware. But when we get reports, we do any kind of reports that we get from, let's say WWF or even ACRES or some of the members of public, we do act on them, and then we immediately go down and actually show a very strong presence to tell people that this is illegal. And I think, like what I said before, I think the education on why they should not be kept as pets and why they are illegal is far more important, so that the message spreads better, and it's more taboo to keep these pets.
Right. And do you think, have you seen more reports, or do you confiscate more, knowing that, especially now, people are finding new hobbies, right, and interests while being cooped up at home because of the pandemic. Now they are more exposed to these things. By any chance in Singapore, if there are any more reports because of the pandemic?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know, and I'm not sure whether people are really very cooped up. I know that people work a lot, 9 to 5. There's like just online meetings all the way, but we do find a lot of people visiting our parks just to as a form of refuge. We keep our parks open, so on the weekends we are there to do safe distance measures and all that. Yeah, so I'm not. I think, yeah. Interestingly, we also give out seeds, to people so that they can take up edible gardening as a hobby. We have a lot of webinars on city in nature and all that stuff. So I want to believe that people are doing healthy things. They are going on hikes. Like you have a Hikers SG Facebook post. Everybody's trying to explore Singapore. So that's really great on Singapore, and I'm glad that we have played a part in facilitating that kind of activity and hobby, that is probably nice for everyone to escape
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. I think on that note also, since we're already talking about the social media platforms and online trading itself, there is one particular question from our member of audience. This is for Sami to answer. He's interested to know how many of these online adverts translate into actual transactions. By any chance, because Google has some of their own platforms. So are you able to track these things?
Sure. I can speak kind of broadly in terms of how online advertising, has worked so far. So the industry is going through some changes right now, and I'm certainly not the expert in this field. I focus more on our software engineering development platforms, but I did spend some time in this space as well. Basically, to answer your question as to whether these online advertisements or what rate these online advertisements actually lead to transactions, you need to understand a little bit about how the online advertisements appear in front of a consumer or user of the internet. Now, today, most of the ads you might see would probably be targeted to an internet user with your browsing profile. And so without having your personal information, you might be leaving cookies. Now there's some updates to this technology that's happening, but you might be leaving what they call cookies. So if you visit a certain site for fashion, for example, you might go to a different website and all of a sudden you receive some advertisements regarding to fashion and possibly from that site that you had visited. So these are very targeted advertisements. Now on Google search, for example, I can speak about our platform. We try to show ads that are relevant to the search query that you typed into the search bar. So if you ask it, hey, where can I buy ivory online? These are actually search terms. These are words that a potential, illegal wildlife trader might want to target. So if you're using these terms or similar terms, they'll want to advertise against those, right? Just like in the real world, you might say, oh, I have a lot of, like maybe you have a certain type of product where a certain, business district, for example, would have a lot of potential customers. So you'd say you want to have your billboard in that area where they have their offices or where they might live. And similarly, it works the same way on the web. Is if you show an interest or preference for something, then the internet responds and advertisements respond to that interest with something that's customized to you. Now, this is what I talk about when I say, look, the internet is a community of all of us. One company is not bigger than the other when it comes to the internet. You can really access just about anything and share anything. And so then, we have to ask ourselves, what are the questions we're asking? What are the type of behaviors we're having online? Are we asking the right questions when we purchase something? Are we ensuring that things do have the proper certificates or are indeed legally traded? And are not taken in an illegal way or captured in an illegal way, these kind of things. These are the kind of things that, for us as users of the internet, we have to stay vigilant on. And so, look, if somebody is going to the internet to look for something, they will receive advertisements on various platforms, and those advertisements will have a high, what we call a click-through rate, right? They'll probably lead more often to a transaction. It's not online advertisements on average, they won't get more than single digits, maybe low double digits percentage of it. So like if the ad shows up 100 times to people, maybe only 5 to 15 people might actually click on the ad. And then of that, maybe only one person will actually make a purchase, if that gives you kind of an average. But that's very much a generalization. If somebody's in the market, then they're more likely to click, they're more likely to purchase. And so that's
it's kind of it's kind of reminded me of when I just do a Google search about a shoe, like a pair of shoe. And then suddenly the next 1 week or two, all the advertisements on website I visit, it's all about shoes. I just constantly being bombarded. I think that's one of the strategies they use as well, right? To advertise some of these things.
Absolutely.
Now, on the topic of advertisement, in Singapore, I think there are certain, like casual sellers, like those that really don't know the extent of the legality of these things, or whether they can be sold or not. Maybe Serene, you want to speak more about on that point about casual sellers? How?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we talk about illegal wildlife trade, we tend to think like big organized crime syndicates shipping like tons, like huge containers of wildlife. But what we found from our online research is that a majority of the people who sell wildlife online are actually what, as you mentioned, casual sellers. So these are people who don't sell large quantities and they don't post very often. So, and they usually will do it on the platform that's convenient to them, like a social media platform that they're already using. So they wouldn't like put in a lot of effort to sell something. It's just to make a quick buck. It's opportunistic. Unfortunately, the volumes of these are quite large. So it still adds to a problem. And even though they are considered casual sellers, they're still taking part in an activity that is often illegal or contravenes the platform's policy itself, so they're violating it. So I think when we talk about the role of these casual sellers, we have to think about the different actors in the wildlife trade chain. So when you have a casual seller, where are they getting the wildlife from? Did they get it from a poacher? Did they get it from a middleman who is actually linked to a wider syndicate of organized buyers and sellers and trappers? So it's quite a complex issue. And I think I also want to, I just want to end up by saying that even though most are casual sellers, we still see a small number of professional, serious traders who are really, they're in it for the money, like big time. It's their main business. They know how to get around the law. They know how to protect themselves and earn lots of money. So these professional traders are probably who the law enforcement agencies want to target and investigate.
So when you mentioned, that's true. Yeah, when you mentioned casual sellers also, I just instantly reminded me of, I think I know a guy who knows a guy who sells, right? And the interesting story about this guy is that he will go into the forest, like he will trek into the deep jungle of Singapore and he will catch it. Like he would go into the drain, the big longkang, he will catch like maybe pythons, and then he kept it and then he sell it. Even to that extent, there's no middleman, there is no poacher. It's him himself who take the action to do it. I think it's just the adrenaline itself.
I'm watching Adrian's face. I think Adrian will have something to say.
Yeah, Adrian, perhaps this is the time for you to share a bit more about maybe the some regulations that is protecting wildlife, or you even want to comment on a particular action, right? Adrian, you need to speak up a bit. I think we are losing you also because of your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Ken. I hope you. Yeah, I don't know whether you can hear me. So
now we can hear you.
A few pieces of legislation. Yeah. So there's the Wildlife Act. It was amended in 2019 to increase the wildlife protection and management of wildlife in Singapore. So it's illegal to import, take, track, and kill and sell any wildlife And the fines are up to 10,000, as is written there, 12 months jail. And if it's protected, like the authors that have been unlisted, it can be up to 50,000 or 2 years jail. Then there's the Endangered Species Act, and this is this fine can go up to 50,000, and it can be aggregated to 500,000 or 2 years jail. So, and I just want to highlight another act now, is a Parks and Trees Act, where we actually protect the wildlife that is found in our core nature reserves and nature areas and parks. So, and this is so there are fines for people who take anything out from there, especially if it's a native species. So these three pieces are very important, and they serve to protect in a holistic way, in terms of trade, in terms of poaching, in terms of releasing, and in terms of our core areas where our endangered, most of our native and endangered species are.
Yeah, I think a lot of people may miss this part of the regulation, that they are really wildlife regulations that is protecting the wildlife in Singapore. Perhaps there is one other slide that I wanted to show you also, Adrian. That is on when you spoke about earlier the different seizures, right? That you made, working with different organizations. What was the one biggest seizure that you made? And talk us through what make it a successful operation.
Yeah, in these seizures, right, like look at this seizure, the sheer scale of it is just mind-boggling. We had worked with the Chinese customs. We also had to work with CITES as well, and on Intel. And once we got the information, we had to look at that, the container. We had to take out that container from hundreds of other containers. It's not easy. So we have a whole of government approach where we work with customs and ICA as well. And then we scan these things, and then we open it up to determine whether it's illegal wildlife trade. Sometimes they are concealed. So we open them, and then what we do is then we make an inventory of them. That's the tough part, because we need to be able to identify them, and we need to be able to determine whether they are illegal substance or not. But in this case, it's quite clear cut. And for the pangolins, we were able to, and the elephant tusks, we were able to use DNA to quickly determine whether it belongs to the savanna species or the forest species. Both are illegal to be traded.
Adrian, if I could just stop you for a while, maybe we need you to speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe put the
sorry,
mic
can you
closer.
hear me? Yeah. So so for the pangolins, we saw 4 species of pangolins, 2 ground pangolins and 2 arboreal pangolins from Africa. Of course, we then had to safely destroy this this cargo, because we don't want it to go back to the market. But we do sample them, as I said before, for scientific reasons. And we are accompanied by auxiliary police, armed auxiliary police, to the incineration plant. So these are gotten rid of, but before that, they are sampled for further genetic testing. Yeah. So that's
I was going to ask, what happened after that? Yeah, so really is all the ivories and the seizures are incinerated or crushed, in other words, right?
Yes.
There is one question here by one of the audience members is, usually how are these illegal products smuggled through customs? Nowadays they know how the operation is being done. They have seen some of the seizures some of their cargoes being seized. So I'm pretty sure they tend to get smarter, right? They find different ways. So what are some other methods that the illegal trade has developed, to be kind of outsmart the immigrations and customs? This is for Adrian.
I can't really reveal. I can't really reveal the
Okay.
the mode of operations. I think it will be horrible, because then but there are ways. So I must say that the syndicates, especially with this type of high value kind of trade, right? Illegal wildlife trade, right? They do move around. They do test out different ports, and it's important that we work with. We do last year, I think 2 years ago, we were nominated into the Wildlife Crime Working Group that is convened by Interpol. And so that is really very helpful because then um, what happens is that we can just text each other, and we can text just on WhatsApp for very quick information, and we have access to the global network of enforcement agencies as well. So that has been very important. So we have been working to increase our networks.
Cool. Thanks for that. Perhaps this is the next question that I have. This is for Sammy because it's been on my head at the time being. So, wait, sorry, hold on. Before that, I do want to touch on some of the penalties you did mention, right? Because there's a lot of penalties really being implemented. Is penalty the most effective way to deter these things, Adrian? Just one last question for you before I go to Sami.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it is one way of doing it, but I think it's also education. I think that's very important as a tool to make sure that people understand why they shouldn't be doing this. Another thing that I feel is that the supply and demand is very important. You can deter the demand by education, but what about the supply, right? Maybe there are alternate livelihoods that richer nations can help develop in some of these countries as well. So I think alternate livelihoods, greener livelihoods can be imagined and created to stop this trade.
Yeah, I do. We really need to have a different approach, right? Not just penalties, but really comes down to education, and perhaps there are also other angles that we have not seen. Maybe we're already trying to exploit right now, right? To really, nail down what is the most effective way to bring down the illegal trade. Speaking about strategies just now, you got me interested a bit, Sammy. What are some of the strategies these syndicates use to penetrate the online market? You did mention that they use ads, right? Yeah. But I think that there are a couple more ways, right, that they do it other than ads. Perhaps you want to share us through. The reason why I wanted to ask this question is so that our audience member knows what to look out for.
Absolutely.
So they don't fall for this trick. So perhaps you can enlighten us on that as well.
Absolutely, and thank you. Yeah, there's a slide there that covers one of the things, and there's a great question. I was just looking at the Q&A list. Thank you everybody who's asking so many great questions here. There was one also about how can Google, tech companies be able to stop advertising against these types of queries, right? These types of searches for clearly illegal wildlife. And it's challenging. So the first thing we did as this organization, right? What we have been working on, and you can find out more about it if you just search Coalition to End Wildlife Trafficking, and WWF Traffic and IFA, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. They convene all the members. Google was an initial kind of founding partner, but there are over 40 technology companies now working together. Like, this is a space where we can actually work together and try to fight this and try to combat what's happening here. And one of the things that Google is doing is saying, okay, well, we know the search terms now, right? That people are putting into the search engine. So we can see that from a Google perspective. Much of that is public knowledge. You can look at keyword searches using Google tools. Anyone can do that. But we needed to understand what we should be looking for. So we worked with WWF and we worked with these organizations to understand all the different endangered species, all the words that are associated to them, not just the scientific names, but also the common names for them as well. And so then we have to maintain this list. And this is something that WWF and Traffic and IFA are helping, is they're maintaining this master list of all these types of keywords that can be then shared with companies like Google, and that we can update our list, our own detection algorithms and tools to ensure that they're being blocked, right? Or in some cases, some platforms are even, the moment they see some of these search queries from users, not from advertisers would get blocked almost immediately, but if a user types something, that they would actually have what we call an interstitial, like a flag saying, hey, look, what you're looking for is illegal. Do you really want to do that? Right? Like those kind of messages. And please be sure that, you're using this platform and the internet responsibly. So there are awareness measures and these types of things that we're trying to do. But as you can see, it gets more and more complicated. These syndicates and these traders, they use oftentimes very innocent looking, listings on a social media listing. Hey, we get you're interested in exotic pets. Now we just had another batch in our beautiful, whatever organic grass-fed plantation. They'll call it whatever, makes it seem safe and innocent. And if that isn't enough, they'll start using coded words. So in this case, you can see IVO, the word IVO being used to hide the word ivory. You can see R horn for rhino horn, right? So we can't not only have the scientific words and the informal words, we also need to learn this jargon constantly, this slang, the slang and the code words that are being used to be able to make sure that our search or our algorithms, our detection platform is always up to date. I think there's another slide here. If you just click forward, and yeah, emojis, acronyms, deliberate misspellings of words, right? Habery, Highbury instead of ivory, right? Yeah, it's like, okay, well, this is becoming more and more complex, and actually we can't even think about all the potential permutations of letters sometimes of every single word. We do rely, to Adrian's point, on algorithms to help us. The smarter that we can help artificial intelligence become to understand from a human perspective, this sounds like this word, or this spelling could sound, or has been used similarly in this type of context. It's quite an advanced thing, but with the computing power that we have today and the type of machine learning platforms that we have at Google, we use TensorFlow. It's an open source platform, which means we've made that platform available to everybody to use to create their own kind of machine learning algorithms. That tool is something that has become sophisticated enough because of the community and everybody who's involved in building it, that it can actually suggest that, hey, maybe this word could be flagged as well. Maybe it's not something we flagged earlier, but it could be flagged. We're also seeing this challenge in the next slide in translations. And so it's not just one language. We have to use tools like Google Translate and so on to try and get the translation. But guess what? A slang word in English isn't the same as the slang word that might be used, or the code word that might be used in another language. So then you have to look at that across all the languages, which is a challenge as well. And as Google Translate continues to get better, I mean, already we're able to speak to a Google Assistant, for example, in over 100 languages. That's an impressive feat, and we're proud of that. But there's so much more to be done. There's so much more to be done there, and certainly when you get into code words, we need help. It's not something that any one company can do by themselves. We have teams dedicated to it. Serene, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to jump on and add that some people don't even use code words. Like in this example here, it's just hello. So if you used a text-based algorithm, you wouldn't find any of these. And a lot of people have started embedding text in the image themselves. So we need to use image recognition and all that. And that's really going into really technical and quite difficult territory.
It is.
Yeah.
And you're spot on. So this is actually something that we're speaking with WWF and Traffic with on the image recognition side. So Google also uses its platform. For example, if anyone here uses Google Photos, it's using a version of TensorFlow, which is the platform we made available to everybody to use. It's using our basically TensorFlow to help us understand what's happening in your photos, so that we can suggest certain things to you. Your happy memories of your children, and we can organize that for you. We can help you recall birthdays, beach photos, sunset photos, all those kind of things using image recognition and a very large database of things that we understand people want to find. And what's needed now is a sophisticated library of images that that are just full of images of products made of endangered species. It's a very sad database that we have to create, but that's actually what we have to create, and then we have to train an algorithm to be able to detect that proactively in the future. And so and that's how these tools work. They're fully, they're primarily trained based on the data that we are able to show it. So Serene's absolutely spot on here. It is complicated. It does lead to sometimes quite a bit of ambiguity. Artificial intelligence or machine learning is hardly ever 100%. It'll be, oh, well, we're 87.22% sure that could be an ivory beaded necklace. But somebody then needs to actually look at it, confirm before the police bust open their doors.
Well, Sami, you did already answer the question that I was about to ask you about what are some technology Google have, and you did mention a couple of things like machine learning, artificial intelligence. I think those are really important points that you brought up, because I think, again, a lot of people have this understanding where anything that happens online or Google has like jurisdiction to some of these things, right? Like you guys know everything that happens online and you are able to stop it just at the power of your hands, But now that we do,
that would be a scary thing if any company or person had that type of power.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I think right now we do know what the actual challenges. We're just kind of monitoring some of the things that's happening online, and especially Eagle Trade. And you mentioned the different coded languages. All these things really makes it a lot harder. But what I'm getting for you also from Serene and Adrian is that these technologies are getting better. Like a lot more people are more creative to innovate better technologies and artificial intelligence. And this really where we're going is we are headed to the right direction. And a lot of the questions that we have from the audience also, it's about the solution, right? Already everyone is so excited to know what's next, what can we do? Perhaps this one is for Adrian to speak about. What are some other interventions, perhaps maybe from NParks, one of you, interventions to deter illegal wildlife trade online?
I think some of the times what we do is we rely on this type of information, from our NGOs as well as our own investigations to trawl the net, and we get this information and we do enforcement because we are empowered to do that, So that is the sharp end of the tool. Also understanding how, with our more powerful algorithms, understanding how it is being sold, what kind of trade flows, what kind of trends are happening, becomes very important. This type of data analytics are very important. It allows enforcement agencies like ourselves, to better act on this type of information. The stronger the intel, the stronger the information, the better we can act on this. And we do, and of course, like we do publicize some of this, and then this the seizure of the task and all that. And at least it acts as a deterrent as well. So I guess those are very important things. I can't underemphasize education. I think it's very important. I see from the chat that everybody is quite passionate about this topic. That's great to see. So we really need more of this. Yeah.
Okay, and we do have a question from the audience again. This is for Adrian also. Is there a way to control wildlife trading and captures using technology like CCTV in reservoirs as part of your regulation? Can we use CCTVs in reservoirs or lakes to prevent wildlife being captured, or maybe put it in the forest? Because we know there are people here who do that on a casual basis. So as part of the deterrence strategy, is that a good strategy?
Yeah, definitely, because we do have CCTVs in our parks and nature reserves. We also do rely on camera traps as well. This not only helps us to monitor the ground, but it also helps us to monitor the health of the ecosystems. So we do have camera traps surveys in the nature reserves as well, and this happens annually for a period of 3 months. Every month, every year. And so that we get an idea of what is the annual kind of distribution of animals, like pangolins, and mouse deers. We got a lot of mouse deers in our nature reserves, and even the wild boars, and other creatures like we do have porcupines as well, the Malayan porcupine, and the slow lories. And we look at how they are using connectors, how they are using culverts, how they are using our road bridges for the langurs. We have road bridges for them to cross as well. So it's not only to protect these animals, but it's also to see how they are doing. But definitely we have used this type of technology to help us in our enforcement. Yeah, good question,
Yep.
Rick.
Yeah, good question. I think really I didn't see the other part of the answer, though, that it can also be healthy to monitor, right, the wildlife that we have in Singapore. Again, on the question on solutions, are there any tools online that can help identify illegal wildlife trade products and prevent them being listed in the first place? And I know there's, I think both Sami and Serene can jump in on this one. Perhaps you can start with Serene first.
I just want to say I wish there was. It would make our life so much easier. Actually, a lot of our monitoring is quite manual because we are trying to pick up on all these new trends that, like new code words that people have never used before, new species that you don't find in trade. So these emerging trends are not something that you can teach machines to do before you even know about them. So yeah, a lot of our monitoring is still very labor intensive. You got to scroll through thousands of listings to look for things. So yeah, if there was an easier way to do it, I'm on it. We're all on it.
Well,
Sammy?
yeah. Yeah, maybe Sami can jump in and say if it's possible, or maybe some
Yeah.
already, yeah.
So I'm a strong believer, as I know the other panelists here are, of citizen science as well. I think we need to work together to solve a lot of these challenges. Now, to Serene's point, we don't have great tools to help you immediately know or identify that, hey, oh, this thing I was about to buy, it's actually illegal. Google has Google image search. So when you see an image of something, you can actually drag that image into like a browser tab with Google image search open, and it'll upload that image immediately, and it'll try to find you similar images and give you context about that image. If you use Google Photos, right now, we have a button that we've been working on for quite a while now that can help actually bring context to the image that you have. It's called Google Lens. And so any photo that you look at in Google Photos, you can click on Lens, and it'll do something very similar to what I'm describing in image search, but it might even give you more information about that, where it's located, the object in the photograph. So those are some basic, very consumer-friendly tools that could be used to at least understand, could this be illegal, right? Like if half the image results come back saying that, hey, this is a pangolin scale, then already you should have a good sense that this is probably not a legal product that you'd want to be encouraging. The other thing that we'll probably hopefully talk about later is the WWF Wildlife Cyber Spotter.
I was gonna, yeah.
Yeah,
Just go ahead, yeah.
Great. Yeah, so I think this is an appropriate place to mention it. It's come out as a result of the coalition to end wildlife trafficking. While we do have these 40 companies come together now today, and this year is our third year in operations, and we share. And there was another question as to whether we share this list of words with authorities and so on. And I think WWF is trying to share this list with as many relevant organizations in traffic as well, with law enforcement, where it makes sense, obviously in a protected way, so that those on the other side of this problem aren't getting those tools. But the other part of it is we realize is that it has to be two-way, right? The internet is a community, just like any other marketplace or town or place that we interact with each other. And our algorithms aren't going to catch everything. So the Cyber Spotter program is something where you can get involved. Anyone here can get involved, and actually, when you see something that looks suspicious, you can flag it through the Cyber Spotter program, and we'll have experts. The WWF, Traffic, IFOD, they have dedicated resources. They have a community review process, but they also look at it themselves. And I've spoken to the people who go through thousands of these images and listings, and a lot of effort is put into this to make sure that we're helping people accurately identify and flag and report these types of listings. And so it's an incredible program. Google, we've gotten our employees involved in it a couple of times now. We've had 2 sprints, one in the US primarily and one in Asia very recently. Where overall we've had hundreds of Google employees just say, all right, we're spending the next 2-3 weeks and we're going to spot and flag as many of these illegal wildlife listings as we can possibly do during that time. And something like 1,700 or more than 1,700, I think, listings have been flagged and taken down. Advertisements, but also search listings, these types of things. And yeah, it's been very successful so far.
Yeah, and also to add on to what Sami said, again, just a little bit more additional information to every one of you. It's called the Cyber Spotter program, and there is a link that we put in the chat. You can go and look up, see if you're interested in the to read more about it, because I think, like what Sami said, I personally feel it's a terrific, a fantastic program if you're really interested in spotting illegal wildlife products yourself. So we'll go through trainings by our WWF experts. You'll really identify how to identify what to look for, what kind of keywords. So these are things that you will learn. So do look up WWF Cyber Spotter program, right? Again, this is another question for Adrian. Is on Singapore, right? I think maybe there are people in this audience that may have possession of illegal wildlife product or live pets. So they want to know how best they can surrender. So how do they surrender it, like safely, without being incriminated or anything like that? So maybe you could guide us through that. Yeah.
You should just us, and then we'll work through this with you, because if it wasn't intentional, it wasn't an intentional trade, or you did it without being, all those consideration, definitely, but it's a big step, if you own something that's your own, do come to us, So we have a hotline, 1-800-476, I think you can put it on the chat or something like that.
Yeah, we'll put it on the chat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, this one is for Serene. Thanks, Adrian, for that. For young conservationists interested in working on combating IWT, what projects or organizations can they turn to?
Well, I think Sammy's mentioned one of them. The Cyber Spotters program is one thing that you can join. I think volunteering is, obviously I would say that volunteering is something that would be great for young aspiring conservationists to do, to try out, to see if that's something that you like, if it's suited to who you are and your personality, and also to sort of get yourself in the scene, so you get to learn from more experienced conservationists and also get your name out there. So yeah, I think volunteering is probably one of the best options out there. And if you're interested, I think maybe a quick Google of organizations in the country that you're in, but in places like, well, in Singapore specifically, WWF is a good one. NParks also has a volunteer program, if I'm not wrong. ACRES, there's a few other NGOs as well. So yeah, you can definitely look for that.
All right, thank you for that. Next question is for Sammy. About dark web versus the internet. I think this has been going on in this person's mind. I think he asked, she asked a couple of times, how important is the dark web in wildlife trading? Any idea what share is advertised and traded in a dark web versus internet?
Yeah. Great question. So I'll be honest, this is not an area that I'm an expert in. In fact, Google is not I wouldn't say is active or an expert in this space either. The dark web, for those who don't know about it, is basically part of the internet that isn't uh, registered openly the way that most websites that we visit are. It means that you need to know exactly where the location of that website is to be able to access it. You can't go to a standard search engine, or you can't go to a platform or something like that, and it'll just show up for you. So that's sort of the dark web, to give you an understanding. There's been a lot of news around the dark web, around how illegal trade across a number of different industries, not just wildlife trade, happens there, and it's because of the aspect of it being very difficult to trace anybody on the dark web, to be able to track any activities. I think law enforcement, thankfully, has gotten a lot better tools to be able to track illegal types of trade on the dark web. So it's also becoming more sophisticated on the law enforcement side. But it's quite impossible for us right now to know just how much wildlife trade or any type of trade is happening there, because of the fact that you only know it's there if you know it's there, right? In the search engine, in a popular search engine of any type, you can search a category and you'll find as much as what is available on the open web. But the dark web doesn't work that way. So it's actually very difficult to assess. I will say, though, that the status of the illegal wildlife trade, to Serene's point before, and what we were talking about earlier, is that at this stage, it's very much out in the open. And so I would argue that, and based on some statistics that have been done on this, there's been some research in this field, that I'd argue that most of it is actually out in the open on these popular social media and e-commerce platforms, the vast majority of it. And so until we, as both tech companies, but also tech users, internet users, take action against this, right? We start to have the algorithms working for us. We start to have, flagging happening at the user level, and we start working together we won't be able to force them down, this industry down into a darker web environment, which is good, right? Because there's fewer consumers for stuff like the dark web. I think most people who are just trying to have good products, responsibly sourced, all those kind of things, aren't going to be defaulting to the dark web to buy their things. And so if we push it down in the dark web, the size of the market decreases, the availability, the safety that these traders have becomes less as well. So they have to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's a good thing. But we need to work on it from both sides, right? We need to increase awareness, which I know Adrian and Serene have mentioned as well. It's a big part of the coalition, is increasing awareness of our users, that they can spot, they understand that these things are illegal, and they hurt the environment, they hurt so many different aspects of life, and that we have those enforcements in place. And sorry, Serena, I saw your hand go up as well.
Yeah, you actually covered one of the points I wanted to make about how a lot of things are still on the open web. And remember the point I made about casual traders. So if illegal wildlife trade was forced to the dark web, I bet a lot of these casual traders wouldn't go there, just because it's so much effort. And it's really, really illegal stuff as well. But the other point is, they probably don't have to go to the dark web, because we're starting to see people are shifting to more closed platforms. So like closed messaging services or secret groups, where it's less open and less accessible, but it's still a closed community of potential buyers and sellers. So we are also trying to see if we can develop strategies to tackle this. And like Adrian mentioned, intelligence is very important. So we need investigations and information, tip-offs about these groups and where the trade takes place, from anyone who happens to have information about it. But also we're starting to talk to the various tech companies to see if there's any solutions that we can explore when looking at these closed messaging services.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, you know, we act on every information we have. So like all this, you know, information that you garner, whether it's you know, from our participants or anything like that, and if you send it to us, we act on every intel that we get. So that, you know, those efforts won't go in vain as well. So I'm so glad that this coalition has been formed, because then the intel becomes more reliable, which is very important. If not, it also you know, is taxing to our resources as well. Yeah, so if the more reliable the information, the better it is, and the better our enforcement strategy.
Yeah, there was a question that someone wanted to ask you, Adrian, about how NParks is working with NGOs, tech companies, and scientists as part of the Wildlife Forensic Center. And you did mention that the coalition, and you mentioned about how you want to use some of these data to help with your work, having scientists help to determine the DNA. So am I right to say this? Would you want to you know, jump in and share a little bit more about wildlife forensic centers, and what are some of the projects or upcoming things you're working on?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so we use various means of information. In fact, actually, NParks has a lot of expertise in, you know, the field of timber as well, botany. We do have zoologists that can identify, you know, some of these illegal products, which is very important, because some are regulated and some, you know, some are not allowed to be sold. So it's very important to be able to identify them correctly as well when we do enforcement, because that's important. We also look, the Center for Wildlife Forensics also is, you know, linked to our expert panel as well. We have expert panels who are international scientists, experts in their own right, which is very important. And we are working with tech companies as well to in identification tools. And you know, you don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be an expert. Like what Sammy was saying, you know, citizen science is very important. We do you know, welcome anyone who wants to volunteer with us in this fight against illegal wildlife trade. You know, to spread the message. You know, so we already have working groups. You know, with different NGOs as well, and tech companies and scientists. But you know, I think citizen science is one of the aspects that we could improve on, because you know, we have citizen scientists that go into our field to study biodiversity already. But in the terms of illegal wildlife trade, it'd be great to have more people, you know, looking at the internet, trawling the internet, and helping us, and working in tech companies as well. So that's a really good aspect to look into.
I'm really starting to see how all three organizations like NParks, Google, and Traffic coming together and support each other's work. I think it's really a collective action at the end of the day. Leverage on others' expertise, right, to combat some of these things. And I like the part when you mentioned, all of you mentioned about citizen science. That is really how we can be a part of the solution, right? Other than just more reactive way to do it, like not buying illegal wildlife products, a more reactive way, but we can take a more proactive approach by helping us to come up with these data, like being in a cyber spotter program, or just report some of the online listings that you have. And we did put in the chat the links to the cyber spotter program, but we also put in the coalition link as well. So these are the two areas, websites that you can use to actually report any online listings. And again, to assure you, we have a group of people at the back end to really look through some of the listings that you have reported. And it can be an arduous, difficult, long, but that is the commitment that we have, that's the dedication. And we couldn't be more grateful to have you to be a part of this and help us to go through it together. And just being mindful of time, maybe one last question, okay? Already 8:26. For all, very briefly, do you believe that there will ever be a world ever fully extinguished of illegal trading? Maybe just a quick one from each of you. Do you believe, or maybe we can have one from Adrian?
Yeah, you know, I think it's like the Red Queen hypothesis. You have to run as fast as you can to remain in the same place. So we have to continually fight against this and not be not assume consume anything. So we have that up.
And anyone, Sammy or Serene? Maybe Sammy can speak more about the technology aspect about fully extinguished.
I believe that people are inherently good if we get the incentives and the education out to everybody as we shed maybe traditional thoughts, beliefs, customs that science has helped disprove. I think these types of things can help all of us really extinguish the vast majority of illegal trading. I think if people have better alternatives, better education around it, and we can all do our part to do that, as we've discussed, we'll get there. We'll get very, it'll be so much better, and we're on that track.
Go on. And one final word by Serene.
I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective. The reason species of wildlife are protected and it's illegal to trade them is because they're so threatened, right, by the level of harvest and whatever. But if we're able to regulate things down to a level where it's actually sustainable to trade in wildlife, then we can eliminate wildlife trade. I think that day is quite far away, but the more we work towards that goal, the more it would be easier to eliminate and cut out illegal trade, and therefore be able to promote well-regulated and sustainable wildlife trade. So hopefully we will see that day.
Thank you, panelists, for your insights. Again, couldn't have a better group of panelists to speak on the subject. Maybe I'm just going to take the last 2 minutes to just wrap up everything. I think at the end of the day, from what I gathered from every one of you here, esteemed panelists, to be for us as consumers to be mindful of what we buy, right? Whether it's on physical stores or online. I know it sounds super obvious, right? But these trades are operated in a way that is not so obvious sometimes. So chances are, again, you probably have participated in wildlife trade, but much of it is legal and regulated, like buying seafood or plants, right? But there are those that are not regulated. These are the illegal ones and the ones that we need to take note of. So, and then again, especially in this day and age where buying and selling is made so simple that it can be easily mistaken as okay to do it because it looks so innocent. Again, like how Sammy has mentioned, some of the website really look very innocent, right? Actually, it is not so innocent after all, right? That we didn't even suspect anything. I think generally the majority of people in Singapore know that we shouldn't buy illegal wildlife products, but there are still cases where we are facilitating this illegal trade without us knowing. So there are some things that you can do. So gathering again from all the panelists have mentioned, really when you want to buy something, just be careful of what you buy. Ask or read carefully before you buy a certain thing, whether it's online or physical stores. And obviously there are certain pets. If you really want to have pets, wildlife as a pet, you need to look up the NParks page and see what is legal, what is required. I think there are some certification as well. So do look it up so you know that you're not buying illegal pets. And one last thing you can do, again, taking the more proactive approach, that is to report. We spoke about the internet being as a tool initially, right? To use it as something that is good. It can also be used as something that is bad. But internet also has made the world much smaller, right? In a way that it's now easier for us to report illegal wildlife trade, and everyone else can do, as part of like citizen science. And one way you can do it through is through reporting or Cyber Spotter program. So I guess that's the end of it, guys. Thank you again for joining us in the webinar. Big thanks again to the panelists for being here. Adrian, Sammy, and Serene, thanks for being here. Not forgetting our donors and supporters as well. Thank you for being on this journey with us. You guys made it possible for us to carry our mission again and again. We hope it has been an insightful experience, insightful sharing for all of you. Right, there is a feedback form. Really love to have to know what you think about the session today, and share with us what other topics you want us to venture and to talk about in the coming episodes. We put the link of the feedback form in the chat below. So until we meet again, thank you everyone, and goodbye, good evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
And
WWF.
sorry we didn't get
Thanks,
answer
everyone.
all the questions. There's so many great questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Heiko.